Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Chimera's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So, on today's episode, I'm going to be taking you through some amazing, awesome, and fantastic, all the keywords right there, staple alternatives. So, cards out there can be incredibly expensive. You don't need to spend up on them. There are other options for you. Let's jump into them. So, with this format, first up, I'm going to highlight the staple card that is expensive and probably will always be expensive. Heroic Intervention is one of those cards. And then after I talk about this card, what makes it good, I will take you through the alternatives that are much more budget friendly. I'm talking about like around $2 at the very most, compared to, and some much less than that I should say, compared to, $11.59 for this Commander staple. And with the staples, I'm only taking cards from the top 100 according to EDH Rec. Here we go. An instant for 2 mana in green. That would be 1 in a green. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Now, why is this good? Well, it should be pretty obvious that it's good because it protects your things for a very, very, very cheap amount. Again, literally just 2 mana to protect your entire board from not every single situation, but nearly every single situation. Literally, this 2 mana I get out of jail free card. Essentially, again, hexproof, good for anything that is actually just being targeted. Indestructible, typically will protect against any kind of a wrath effect, basically, or just like single target removal or whatnot. But yeah, typically this is like, oh, you cast a board wipe, I save my team. And yeah, if you try to target them in any other way, yeah, it would be saved. Yeah, it's an amazing card. Again, just 2 mana. That is pretty unheard of for that effect. In fact, a lot of other effects are like, oh yeah, 3 mana for like 1 of those. We'll go through some alternatives though. And when it comes to these alternatives, I'll try to keep them mostly within the exact same color restriction, essentially, because if you're building a commander deck and you're like, I want to replace this card in my deck because I don't want to, pay up for that one. If I give you like, say, a white card, you couldn't do it if you don't have white in the deck as well. That being said, I will give alternatives to that at the end too. Okay, here we go. Rapid Vigor. First up, this is a big one. Wizards, I think, reprinted this on the list, but has not actually ever reprinted this, and they should, although they probably won't, because they don't really bring back regeneration all that much. Anyways, instant for 2 mana in green, exact same cost, again, instant speed, and instant speed, of course, is crucial for all these. Regenerate each creature you control. Now, this, of course, is not perfect, when it comes to saving your team. Indestructible isn't either. There's ways around it, right? Like Edict Effect, Sacrificing, or like Mass Bounce. That being said, this one does not get around, say, like Wrath of God. That being said, when it comes to Wrath effects, which are named after Wrath of God, most aren't specifying like they can't be regenerated. That's usually not how things go. So basically, this will get you out of most circumstances, that Heroic Intervention will get you out of when it comes to protecting your team. Obviously, regenerating, though, they're tapping or whatnot, afterwards, too. That's okay, though. Still, again, just 2 mana, protect your entire team, not from targeted effects. Again, not from, a hexproof standpoint, but from you're going to destroy them. That's not happening. I am saving my entire team from, say, most board wipes with this. So it's a fantastic card in just 87 cents. Next up. Smuggler's Surprise. Here we go. An instant for a single green mana, but it's got spree, so you can pay more than that, of course. I mean, you kind of have to. +2. Mill 4 cards. You may put up 2 creature and land cards from among the mill cards in your hand. +4 to a green. You may put 2 creature cards in your hand on the battlefield. And +1. This is what we care about here. Creatures you control at power 4. Greater gain hexproof indestructible until end of turn. So this is the exact same thing as Heroic Intervention. Literally, if you just utilize that last effect. But obviously just for creatures that are, power 4 or greater. So if you've got a big creatures build, this is literally the exact same thing as Heroic Intervention, but even better because you've got additional options too. Yeah, if you've got a bunch of small creatures built or like a bunch of small tokens, you're not going to utilize this. But if you have a good amount of big creatures or ones that you really care about saving, yeah, it's a really good card for that. Around $2 right now. And of course, it gives you that option to get things off the top of your library or just cheat massive things for your hand into play. Absolutely a great option, again, for the right deck. Speaking of which, next up, Inspiring Call. This one is massive for decks that want it. Now, this one is 3 mana, so it is 1 more. Do keep that in mind. That being said, well, hey, do you like drawing cards as well? Great. This one is just for counters decks. Okay, +1 counters decks. Not like, I was going to say Brawl. But yeah, not like, hey, I'm countering your spell kind of deck. So yeah, being able to cast this for 3 mana and drawing a card for each creature control they counter on it and they get an indestructible type turn, it is a massive play for you typically for those types of strategies where it's like, oh yeah, your opponent cast a board wipe and they thought that they got you, and then you're like, oh, okay, cool, I'll cast this 3 mana spell, protect my entire team, and draw 10 cards. So again, for that specific kind of strategy, it is an amazing card. Next up, though, let's say you really just care about protecting maybe one thing, maybe your commander specifically, and you're like, okay, Heroic Intervention, that's nice, really expensive. I'm fine with just protecting my commander. This is a great way to do so with Withstand Death, an instant for a single green mana, so creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Cool. Again, literally, it's just very simple, very to the point, and it's just 1 mana instead of 2, so obviously Heroic Intervention, better on a global scale, but when it comes to this, if you've got like, oh, I just really care about protecting my commander with this deck strategy, this can be even better than that. I mean, except it doesn't give Hexproof, but yeah, I mean, most of the time it'll be okay, right? Royal Treatment. When it comes to target removal, though, this protects in an amazing way as well. Instant for a single green mana. Target creature control gains Hexproof until end of turn, so again, the other side of that equation. Create a Royal Roll token attached to that creature. Basically, again, if you've got another roll, that one goes in the graveyard. That being said, enchanted creature gets +1 and has ward 1. Now, this is like protection right away from target removal with that Hexproof, but then also like permanent semi-protection with that ward 1, right? It's at least a little annoying for opponents to have to pay extra to target again, so do keep that in mind. That being said, I will break outside the color pie just a little bit really quick, though. Divine Resilience is a good option, again, if you are looking for, well, a way to protect your creatures. This is a huge card from Foundations, an instant for a single white mana, but you can kick it for an extra 2 and a white. Target creature control gain indestructible till end of turn. If this spell was kicked instead, any number of target creature control gain indestructible till end of turn. So, this is kind of like a combination of previous cards we talked about. Again, this is like Withstand Death just on its own, again, in white. Where are you going to say, okay, I just need to protect one creature? Great, I will do that. But if you need to protect your entire team, pay 3 extra mana, protect your entire team. So it is flexible and fantastic. And then finally, Surge of Salvation. Instant for a single white mana. You and opponents you control gain Hexproof until end of turn. For all damage that black and or red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. This is like a big, like, gotcha kind of card in a way. Now, obviously, again, when it comes to protecting yourself and your permanents, with Hexproof, that's mainly what you're looking at. But if you happen to be playing against, again, like black or red sources, this is a huge, huge, huge effect that can be game-turning in your favor. So again, at the end of the day, there are a lot of cards that you can consider to replace Heroic Intervention. There's no like one-to-one. There's no like, no one's ever heard of this card and it's better than Heroic Intervention. Like, that's not what's going on here, okay? When it comes like the internet and people like, knowing cards, obviously, when a really good card becomes a staple, it's a staple for a reason. There is no one-to-one replacement, but there are cards that can kind of fill in the gaps, that they can kind of make up for some things that Heroic Intervention does. They can kind of get there, but not all the way there, but still enough for what you need. Or even better in certain circumstances, again, if you have, say, a counter strategy, cool, Inspiring Call is potentially better than Heroic Intervention. Or if you've got an all-big creature strategy, Smuggler Surprise is better. So really, it is an amazing card. There are other options for you, though, so do keep that in mind. Moving on, I'm going to change things up to a different kind of staple with Timeless Lotus. Yeah, I didn't realize this one's as popular as it is or expensive as it is, but here we go. $14.11, Ledger Artifact for 5, enters battlefield, tap for Wooburg. So this is an amazing, giant, massive burst of mana for you. Literally, you're just like, okay, I'm at 5 mana. Next turn, I'm at 10 mana, probably 11 with a land drop, right? That's literally what you're doing. You're just doubling up your mana by getting this into play. It is a crazy good card. It's also very good for your mana fixing too, obviously giving you access to all the colors. So, and yes, it is restricted to just 5 color decks, but come on, everyone out there. Okay, not everyone out there agrees with me, but 5 color decks are my favorite. I love them. Okay, anyways, there are some pretty direct replacements to this. Okay, there is one pretty direct replacement to this, but it is with a somewhat caveat, okay? Prismatic Geoscope literally does the exact same thing. Just literally does the exact same thing. If you meet a requirement. Artifact for 5, enters battlefield, tap for X mana, any combination of colors to your mana pool or X the number of basic land types among lands you control. So this one does require you to invest in basics. That being said, you should be investing in basics. Basics are amazing. Yes, even in a 5-color strategy, I invest very heavily into basics. I mean, I think typically I have like 3 of each kind at least, but probably around like 9 force or so, because like usually when it comes to the ramp spells, you want to make sure you have like all of those, ready, so you can actually cast those ramp spells when you have them early in the game. But on, a different day, I'll talk about an episode on that. Regardless, being able to get basics out, if you do that, this is actually better than Timeless Lotus, because this one lets you do it in any combination of colors. So literally, if you need like 3 blue mana, a red, and a black, congratulations, you have that. Timeless Lotus can't do that. It can also do Wooburg if you need it. Again, Prismatic Geoscope is an amazing card. I absolutely love it. You should be playing more basics if you're not playing more basics. But let's move on and talk about a card that, again, has potentially more potential than Timeless Lotus as well. That being said, it might take a while to get there, or it might be for a specific kind of deck that can get there with it. Empowered Auto Generator is an amazing one as well. This one just 49 cents. Artifact for 4 mana. Also enters tap. Tap a charge counter on it at X mana and of any one color. X is the number of charge counters on it. So this one only gives you a certain type of color. That being said, I mean, it's any color, so you can pick and choose what you need. But also, it can build throughout the game. Again, the more and more you tap it for mana, the more and more mana you get out of it. So eventually, you can be tapping for well more than 5 mana. And for certain types of strategies out there, like if you have, say, proliferate type effects, or if you build an entire deck around, like doubling up the number of counters on things, like I have, then yeah, you can get absurd amounts of mana out of this. I think my record is tapping for 40 with this. So yes, it has more potential than Timeless Lotus. It's not going to get you there nearly as quickly, though, most of the time. Also, if you've got like an untapped strategy that can work really well with it too, so do keep that in mind as well. Next up, Gilded Lotus. Now, Gilded Lotus is a very, very good card, and I did not realize that it's now just 77 cents, which is amazing until I put this list together. I love it. It's a fantastic card. Artifact for 5, tap for 3 mana of any one color. So this does allow you to tap for mana right away, unlike Timeless Lotus and unlike the previous 2 that we just talked about. So that is a step up on those other 2. That being said, this is tapping for 3 versus 5 mana, and yes, that is a difference. And also, there is a difference where that one is tapping for Wooburg, right? It taps for all colors. This one just taps for 1 color, but it's 3 mana of that color, which can benefit you in certain circumstances where you're like, well, it's nice that I can tap for Wooburg and get all the colors, but this blue spell costs 3 blue. So, yeah, I need to tap other things for that. With this, you can actually just utilize that mana, obviously, with what you need. So, again, a great card. I will break outside the color pie a little bit because it's, like, technically a part of the color pie. So, Traverse the Outlands. Again, if you can use Timeless Lotus in a deck, which is Wooburg, you can utilize Traverse the Outlands. Sorcery for 5 mana. Search live for X base land cards, X Grace power on creatures you control. Those cards in the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. Just want to show off yet another 5 mana card that goes about in a different way. This one's like, hey, do you have a big creatures deck? Congratulations, you are ramping by getting an absurd amount of lands from your library into play. It's a safer form of ramp. Again, like all ramp when it comes to lands is generally safer in Commander because land destruction is a big no-no in Commander. So yeah, there are other options outside of obviously Mana Rocks, but when it comes to like getting big bursts of mana, typically Mana Rocks will get you there quicker than ramping with lands will, except for, again, some edge case cards like this where it's like, well, if you got big creatures, like if you got a commander that has like 10 power, congratulations, you're getting 10 lands. Lovely. Timeless Lotus, again, a great card. There are other alternatives to it. Again, it's like a big burst mana card essentially, but also like perpetual mana. So yeah, it's a really good card. There are other alternatives, even ones that can potentially be better depending on your deck. So yeah, save on this $15, $14 card. Next up, Temur Ascendancy. 2 things Commander players really like. They like going fast and drawing cards. They love doing those things. So, how about enchantment that, well, costs around $7 right now? I remember when this one used to be like 1 or 2. Come on, Wizards, more reprinted. But until they do, you've got some amazing alternatives to this one that we will go through. This one is a 3-mana enchantment in Temur. Creatures control of haste. Whenever a creature power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under control, you draw a card. May draw a card, I should say. So that is actually important right there. That being said, again, go fast, swing right away, and also draw a bunch of cards for the right strategy out there. And with that, hey, yeah, it's just on a 3-mana enchantment, low to the ground, and enchantments typically are a pretty sturdy type of card type that is decently difficult to deal with compared to some other things. So, when it comes to this one, again, we don't have anything that gives us, like, the exact. There's no, like, hey, there's this other thing lying around that also gives haste and draws you cards when any creature comes into play, and it's cheaper and it costs less to get out. No. But what we do have are other cards that are great that do, well, one of these things, or, yeah, something similar. Here we go. Rising of the Day, just 40 cents for this gem. Enchantment for 3 mana in red. Creatures control of haste. Legendary creature control get +1/+0. Now, this has nothing to do with drawing, obviously, but still, it is grant your creatures haste, which might be why you really want Temur Ascendancy. Sometimes, like, okay, I like both aspects of it, but this deck more so needs haste, or this deck only needs haste, and I don't really have big creatures in the deck. Cool. Here you go. It's amazing. It's great. Give your creatures haste for just 3 mana, and also pump your legendary creatures +1/+0, so that might just be your commander, which is nice. And if you have Voltron deck, cool. Or, yeah, if you've got like legendary tribal, it's amazing for that. Next up, very simple, very effective Fires of Yavimaya. Kind of like the standard for giving your creatures haste before, you know, Temur Ascendancy came around. Yeah, creature 12 haste, and then also you can sacrifice it to pump creature +2/+2. This one costs the exact same amount, but yeah, it's easier to get out, obviously, and more decks can have it because it's 1 and Gruul colors. So yes, this is mostly never sacrificed unless like you're desperate at the very end of the game, essentially. Like, oh gosh, pump that thing. Oh, I won the game because I pumped my creature an extra 2. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen Fires of Yavimaya actually really sacrifice, so there you go. That being said, next up, Bitter Reunion, a great card as well. Goes about this in a different way. Enchantment for 2 mana in red, enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. So there is some card advantage there, but it's more of a one-off effect. That being said, still pretty good. But also, pay 1, sacrifice a creature control, gain haste until end of turn. So this is one where it's not perpetual haste for your team, but is like just waiting in the wings for you to utilize it. So yeah, when you do need that one turn where you're like, okay, cool, I've got my army out now I need haste. You give them haste, and then you go for it right then and there. So again, there is some card advantage, plus also some haste there, but again, the haste is not really permanent. Next up, Purphoros Bronze Blooded, 7/6 indestructible god for 5 mana in red. They less than 5 devotion. It's not a creature. Other creature control of haste. Pay 2 and a red. You may put a red creature card or an artifact creature card in your hand on the battlefield. Sacrifice be a next end step. Basically, just, yeah, cheat it out into play and have fun. But this one essentially is going to be, yeah, a little more expensive. Again, this is 5 mana versus 3, but it is easier to cast, not as specific when it comes to the, you know, pips in there. Essentially, it can fit into more decks as well. It's also harder to deal with, being indestructible, of course. And actually, if it's not a creature, it's even harder to deal with because, yeah, like, yeah, sure, someone might have a Path to Exile, but they might not have something that can just exile an enchantment when it's not a creature. So yeah, this is like very, very good at granting your creatures haste and keeping them there. And of course, being able to cheat things into play potentially is quite nice. So do keep that in mind. Next up, on the draw side, though, Garruk's Uprising, an enchantment for 3 mana in green. When this enchantment enters, if you control a creature power 4 or greater, draw a card. Creature control of Trample. For a creature you control, whenever a creature enters the battlefield or you control, basically, power 4 or greater, draw a card. So this one essentially is, on the draw side, better than Temur Ascendancy. This one, again, might draw you a card right away when this comes into play, and Temur Ascendancy does not do that. It draws you the exact same cards, though, when big creatures are coming into play. And on top of that, it gives your creatures trample. So the main difference is trample versus haste. Depends on what your deck needs, but it might need both. Or yeah, if you don't really care about the haste as much as you care about the card draw, this is a shoo-in for you as a replacement card. Next up, not quite there, but still very good, Season of Growth. An enchantment for just 2 mana, so even less than Temur Ascendancy. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield to control, scry 1. Whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature control, draw a card. So even if you don't actually utilize that second part, the first part can still really help you out. Scrying is not card advantage, but it is card selection. It can get rid of dead cards off the top of your library to ensure you get to better cards. So it is, again, it's card selection, not card advantage, but it can kind of like add up to be that in the aggregate if you have enough creatures coming into play. Keep in mind, this does not have any restrictions, unlike Temur Ascendancy as well, or, you know, Garruk's Uprising, where it's like, oh, it has to be certain power. No, it doesn't specify that. It also doesn't specify non-token as well. So it's just like, hey, whenever any of your creatures come into play, you're scrying, you're looking at the top, you're getting things at the bottom. Great, good for you. On top of that, though, if you do have, say, a strategy that has, again, like some targeting effects, if you've got maybe auras, then yeah, you can draw a good amount of cards with this too. So do keep that in mind. Next up, Soul of Harvest. 6/6 trampling elemental for 6 mana. So quite a bit more than Temur Ascendancy. That being said, this is a decent threat as well, being a 6/6 trampler. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield to control, you may draw a card. So this one, again, has no restriction when it comes to the power level of the creature. It does say non-token, so do keep that in mind. But it has no restriction when it comes to power, so any creatures coming into play in your control, you are drawing a good amount of cards with this. Primordial Sage, very similar, a 4/5 Spirit for 6 mana. When you cast a creature spell, you may draw a card. So this one is cast. You can't utilize, you know, like blink effects to like use and abuse that essentially when it comes to drawing. That being said, if someone were to even counter your creature, you still get to draw the card, so there is that benefit for that as well. Garrick's Pack Leader, a 4/4 beast for 5 mana, is one of the last options, actually the last option I'm going to give you right now. A 4/4 beast for 5 mana in green. Creature power 3 or greater, and spell for control, draw a card. So yeah, this one is, again, a little bit lower of a threshold, just 3 power instead of 4 compared to Temur Ascendancy. Still a good way to draw a good amount of cards throughout the game. Yeah, Temur Ascendancy is an amazing card. There's a reason why. It's $6+. That being said, there are cards that like you can add up and kind of get the full effect, or even more so if you get both them in play, and can be even better when you have those synergies. This does both things very well. Other things do the more specific thing better. But yes, this is a very good card that does have a good amount of replacements for it, depending on what you're looking for. Next up, now that we're on the haste train, let's jump into Lightning Greaves. And yeah, this one's a very good card for a reason. This one's $5 or so. I don't think I've ever really seen this one anywhere near my budget levels. That being said, I am very familiar with many of the replacements for it. Equipment for 2 mana, equip creature has haste and shroud, and it's got equip 0, which is kind of unfair. This is a card that is a, hey, do you want haste? Cool, I'll just move it to you. You get haste now. Cool, I'll tap you for mana or whatever you do. Okay, do you want haste? Okay, cool, put on you, you attack. Or tap your ability, or whatever you're doing. As long as you're not like, I want to attack with my entire team and they just got into play and they all have summoning sickness, you can basically put this on every creature you want and give them all haste so that they can tap and use their abilities or whatnot. That being said, it's also just basically utilized as a way to protect mostly your commander with that shroud. So this is basically like I put this in play once, it's there. Oh, my commander came into play, I attach it, it's attached. I can utilize my commander ability or, you know, attack right away with it. But it also has shroud, which is more important. So yeah, Shroud is not quite as good as another thing we'll bring up here in a minute, but yes, it is still very good. Again, it can't be the target of spells or abilities. Amazing. You can't target it either, but if you're playing this in the deck, you probably don't care about that. You're like, oh no, I can't target my commander. Whoop-de-doo. Neither can you, and that's the point. So yeah, this is a card that's just like kind of commander protection for the most part, but also with a lot of utility with being able to move it around and give other things haste. Obviously, the most one-to-one comparison of this is Swiftfoot Boots, which is budget-friendly, thank goodness. This does get reprinted quite a bit. Equipment for 2, equip creature to hexproof and haste, equip 1. The major difference between these two is the equip 1. The equip 1 is very cheap, but that being said, it is much more expensive. Leagues more expensive. I don't know, leagues isn't the term. A lot more expensive than Lightning Greaves. There you go. It is 0 to 1. That is an insurmountable amount because you can't just keep moving it around willy-nilly. But still, it is better than Lightning Greaves with the hexproof option because, again, if you need to target your commander, you still can. So it's a very good card and a great replacement, or a great card that can be used alongside of it, of course. That being said, another good budget option is Lava Spur Boots, which is going up in price. It's $1.91 right now. We went for a single mana, equip 1, equip a creature has +1/0, and haste and ward 1. So this one leans more so, I would say, into the haste. It does give you that +1/+0. It's a little more aggressive again. Costed, it's just 1 mana versus 2. It doesn't have the free equip, unlike Lightning Greaves, but still, yeah, it gives you ward 1, which is definitely not perfect when it comes to targeting things. It's like Hexproof, but worse, and they can pay to get around it. That being said, it's still like a little bit of protection there, like a little bit of like your opponents might think again before targeting, because like, I need that 1 extra mana for something else, so maybe I'll target something else with this spell or whatever I will do. So it's not perfect protection, but it's still a very good card. And again, if you're leaning more so into, okay, I really care about the haste more so, this is a very good option for you that also just gives a little bit of protection to it with a little pump effect as well. Next up, Ring of Valkus. Now, this one kind of gets slept on sometimes because, like, oh, yeah, there's better options. Like, yeah, there's better options too, but it's a very good budget option. And even if you're not in a red deck, consider it. It's an equipment for 2. It has equip 1. It says equip creature has haste in the beginning of your upkeep, but a counter equip creature if it's red. Literally, if you don't have this in a red deck, it does not matter most of the time. Like, some people just like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to use it because my commander I'm attaching this to isn't red or whatnot. If you just care about giving a creature haste, like say your commander, and you want an equipment that can do that, this is an amazing one because it's low to the ground. It doesn't take much to equip again, comparatively to some other ones that we'll talk about here in a bit. But yeah, there's other ones that are like, oh, this one's 3, but it gives you this, and this. Yeah, but I'd rather just pay less and get exactly what I want. Again, just the haste is what I care about. I don't care if it also gives trample or whatnot. It doesn't really matter sometimes. Or flying. Like, if I don't care about those things and I just care about the haste, use the cheapest option for you when it comes to that equip cost, which usually this will have, or, you know, the total cost, I would say, when it comes to the actual mana value plus the equip cost. So again, yeah, if you're not in a red deck, that's okay. And if you are in a red deck, great. Then your creature just keeps growing throughout the game. Moving on. Champion's Helm. Finally right around $2. My goodness, this thing has been so expensive for such a long time. $2 for the foil version, apparently, of this one. Equipment for 3, +2/+2 to the creature. As long as equipped creature is legendary, it has Hexproof and Equip 1. So again, if you don't care about the haste, more so care about protecting your commander with that, you know, Hexproof or Shroud from Lightning Greaves, this is better when it comes to Hexproof over Shroud. That being said, obviously, it's 4 mana in total to get that first equip on versus actually, cast and equip versus just 2 for Lightning Greaves. +2/+2 is nice as well. And again, when it comes to like, okay, I really want to pump my commander as well, that's even better for this. So yeah, again, it's a great option for you. Do keep in mind, though, it's not as flexible when it comes to like, oh, I want to move it to this other creature instead. Oh, wait, that creature's not legendary. I can't do that. I mean, I can move it just +2/+2, though, but it doesn't give it Hexproof. So do keep that in mind. Next up. Mask of Avacyn. Now, this shows off more typically like what you're going to see when it comes to equip abilities from the past when it comes to, or just like the lack of equip abilities when it comes to Hexproof. Yeah, there's not many, but it's still an option though if you need it. Around $1 right now, equipment for 2, +1/+2, and it has Hexproof equip 3. Again, if Hexproof's what you want, there's only so many options out there. They say great one to consider. And then we've got Whisper Soul Cloak, which is very, very good. Equipment for 3, equip 2. Equipped creature can't be blocked and has Shroud. Again, Shroud is a great way to protect your things. It doesn't allow you to target it though, but if you don't really care about it, that's okay. And making your creature unblockable can be massive. So again, this is like, again, doesn't give you that haste angle, but it gives you the angle of unblockability, which is quite nice. Finally, though, Thran Power Suit. This one is really good. It's an equipment for 2. It says equip creature is +1 for each or an equipment attached to it and has ward 2, and it costs equip 2. Okay, so here's what happens with this one. If you have a decent amount of auras or equipment in the deck, it's really good. It can pump for a ton. If you don't, that's okay. You still might want to consider it because ward 2, again, like once you get up to like 2, 3, 4 like extra mana, like people really consider that. They're like, I don't know if I want to pay all that, you know, versus targeting something else potentially. So it gets a little more protected with the more ward that it does have. So definitely keep that in mind. That being said, obviously, Lightning Greaves is the gold standard for a reason when it comes to, yeah, an equipment that grants haste and a form of protection like Shroud, because it has 0 equip cost. That's literally why this one is so good. 0 equip, it's like, oh yeah, move it there, move there, move there, move there. There's other options. There are other very good options. Again, there's other options that are potentially even better if you don't care about paying that equip cost, essentially. And usually the equip cost can be quite low as well. So there are plenty of budget-friendly options. It's a very good card, though. But yeah, you got options. Next up, Bop, Birds of Paradise, a 0/1 bird for a single green mana, flying, tap, add 1 of any color to mana pool. This one's around $5 as well. Yeah, when it comes to Bop, it's like, you know what? It is a very good card. Again, it's a mana dork that is, well, evasive, which usually doesn't matter, but could matter, I guess, if you have a bunch of pump effects, but that doesn't matter really. It's just more so, okay, turn 1, I get something down, and it can filter my mana, not filter my mana, but it can give me perfect mana fixing from this. It can tap for 1 of any color. So if you really care about that, great. If you don't, Land of Elves does the exact same thing in a green deck. Literally just the exact same thing. No flying, but a little more power, obviously, but it taps for a green. Cool. Priest of Titania costs 1 more mana, but the potential for this is so much greater. It's a 1/1 elf druid for 2 mana. Tap for a green for each elf on the battlefield. Even if you don't have any other elves in your deck for whatever reason, that's okay. This can still tap for even more mana because it counts your opponent's elves as well. So definitely keep that in mind. That being said, a bit more consistent if you're not doing this in an elf deck would be like Elysian Carry did. Pretty specific deck as well. A 1/1 plant for 2 mana. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. If you control a creature powerful or greater, add 2 mana of any one color instead. So again, an option if you have a deck that is a decent amount of power-heavy creatures. And being able to just cost 2 and tap for 2, that is huge. So yeah, again, initially it's not going to tap for as much as, or not tap as quickly as Birds of Paradise. Again, it costs 2 versus the 1, but it has more potential to tap for even more for the right deck. Next up, speaking of potential, Twitching Doll, a 2/2 spider toy that is creepy for 2 mana in green. Tap, add 1 mana of any color, put a nest counter on it. Tap, sacrifice it, create a 2/2 green spider creature token with reach for each counter on Twitching Doll, activate on sorcery. So again, no flying on this one, but again, typically that doesn't really matter all that much. It costs 1 more mana, but still, the potential for this one is massive. I mean, if you can keep untapping this and tapping it again, keep adding more counters on it, or yeah, proliferate to get more counters on it, Or if you're just tapping throughout the game, literally, if you get this down early and you're like, oh yeah, it's turn 10. Okay, I'll tap, sacrifice this for 8 counters or whatever, and then all of a sudden I get a massive amount of spiders in play. This can be like game ending for you on a mana dork, which is huge. Next up, simple but effective Nightshade Dryad, 1/2 Dryad with Death Touch for 2 mana in green. Tap spray colorless or tap 1 mana of any color. So if you need that colorless mana, great. If not, again, exact same thing when it comes to, hey, giving you perfect mana fixing like Birds of Paradise does, but 1 more mana to get out. But that Death Touch can be quite nice for, yeah, being just sitting back and being a blocker, or if you have a reason to get through and hit someone, essentially, you can, more likely, because they're going to be like, oh, I don't want to block that tiny little thing. Somber Walled Sage. 0/1 Human Druid that does cost 3 mana, but it can tap for 3 mana of any one color, only for creature spells, though. So if you got a creature-heavy deck, cool, utilize it. This is a giant burst of mana for you. Here in Blade Elite, depends on the deck that you are running, but in a couple decks, it's really, really good. A 1/1 Human Warrior with Vigilance for 2 mana green, 3 mana total. Whenever a human enters the battlefield under control, put a counter on it. Tap for add X mana of only 1 color where X is its power. Again, it's based on its power, so if you've got other ways to pump it, like Anthem effects or equipment, or yeah, if you've got humans coming in, or other ways to get counters on it, it can tap for an absurd amount of mana for you. Finally, Tangled Florahedron, just a nice one to consider as well. A 1/1 elemental for 2 mana, tap spray green, so not very efficient when it comes to comparing to other things like, Land of Elves. That being said, it is an MDFC, so it doesn't really take up a spot in your deck at all. Just a slightly inefficient land when it comes to end of battlefield tap and temporary green. And I actually lied, apparently there's one more. Ornithopter Paradise, just depending on what kind of deck you are in. Yeah, if you're not in a green deck, you can't use the Birds of Paradise anyways, but here's a Birds of Paradise for everyone. There you go. Okay, so Birds of Paradise, again, a very efficient, very low to the ground creature that, again, gets you your mana fixing right there and early. But again, if you've got other ambitions, if you're like, oh, you know what, that's okay, I don't really need to fix for any mana, I'm just like in a green deck, or like I'm in a 2-color deck, it's fine if they don't tap for every color, then cool, you've got a lot of other options like Land of Elves, or like if you're like, I'm okay with being just a bit slower, but I want some more, again, potential for later in the game, or potential to tap for more. There's other creatures that cost 2 or more that can do a lot more than this one. Again, a great option, but there's other options for it. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. As always, comment below with your thoughts on it, and of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.